All right, so let's get started. So today we're going to talk about slow cooker meals. So the idea is I'm hoping that you'll take away some good recipes and just the knowledge to be able to use the slow cooker safely. Because I don't want you having foodborne illness or anything like that just because you use a slow cooker. So that's silly. So we'll get started today. My name is Andrea Nicolai. I work for the University of Florida in the extension in Polk County. I'm a registered dietitian, so I teach food and nutrition and chronic disease classes. And I'm glad you guys are all here today. It's good. So if you have any questions, because I muted everybody, you can type them in the chat box if you would like. And so you can usually, if the bar kind of with all your controls disappears, you can hover over the top or the bottom, and then it usually should like show up. And then there's a ... and you'll find the chat box there. And you can type in any questions like some people have written in right now, good morning, and things like that. So I also have a short evaluation that I was going to send you guys after this, and that will help me know what I can do better. I've been reading all of them, so really do appreciate the feedback, things like that. And just the idea is to teach you something, so then I know if it's not working, I need to do something different. So do you feel this is often true about eating healthy? You can live to be 100 if you give up all the things that make you want to live to be 100. Or would you prefer healthy eating was more like this? It's an amusement park, just enjoy the ride. But imagine this. So you've just walked in the door and you're greeted with this aroma of this luscious soup simmering in your slow cooker, right? And you slice up whole wheat bread. You have a simple salad, right? We're adding the veggies. And then dinner is served. And so Julia Child said, while the joys of roast ribs of beef, filet mignon, T-bone steaks, undeniable, the soul-warming appeal of a beef stew is eternal. So just today we're going to talk about the benefits of using a slow cooker and then the safety, right? Especially, and a couple of recipes. So just some fun things. If you didn't know, slow cooker uses less electricity than an oven. So that can be really helpful. And it's also really nice in the warm weather because you're not turning on the oven. So it's just like I was saying, they can be used throughout the year. I often think of them in the winter time, with the chilies and the soups and things like that. But remembering that they can be really helpful in the summer too, because they're not heating up, like they're not using the oven, which would be heating up the house. So, they're great in the winter, and then in the summer, they don't, just like I said. Okay, so I do want to tell you, the benefits, some of the benefits, they really help tenderize some less expensive cuts of meat. And, it can save you lots of money by allowing you to cook cheaper, less tender cuts of meat that can get amazingly tender because they're cooked slow and things like that. So save the more expensive cuts like that round steak and sirloin, which are very lean. They're better for the grill or the stove top. Whereas, you might as well use the slow cooker for ones that are, cheaper, but need to break down a little bit because that will save you money. And I'm going to show you some lean options to put in there. So the other benefit, is just that they're one-step preparation and cleanup. Other than that cutting board to cut the bread and the salad, right? The bowl for that. You don't have like multiple dishes, and it can be used for a variety of foods. I often think of them for soups and chilies, like the two things that come to my mind. But just on researching this PowerPoint when I first made it, you can really make anything from mac and cheese to lava cakes, lasagna. Yeah, lots of possibilities with this. Okay. So, sometimes you might like get intimidated by different appliances. Oh, Jason commented too, cider could be a good one. That would be really good for the winter time. Add in some spices like some cinnamon sticks and stuff like that. But just really don't be intimidated by it at all with the slow cooker. You know, I had an intern once and she was talking about different things she puts in the slow cooker just because she was at work all day. And she would just try different things and then figure out what tasted good, you know? So it's not supposed to be a hard appliance at all. I just want you to be able to do it safely, which I think, you know, you definitely can, no problem. And so the idea is don't be intimidated like, oh no, was I supposed to put this in first or this? Or like, do I need to put this in? Like, usually you can do some trial and error and get some good results. Almost, she said she ate all the dishes, you know, just then she got better with the seasonings and things like that. And some turned out too soft, right? So just don't be intimidated, like which thing goes on top. You know, it's gonna turn out, okay? Just I'm gonna help you turn it out, you know, so it's the best. So know your slow cooker. You know, read the instructions. If you can read that manual, right? It's great. They're there for you and follow the directions. They can help tell you what is best for your slow cooker, especially the different cuts of the meat. And then most slow cookers, they have, you know, a couple of different settings, right? They have that low, the high, the warm. Um, and the low setting, food will usually cook in about 6 to 10 hours. So if I'm at work, you know, maybe the low setting is the way to go. Um, and high setting, you know, it's great when it's you need it a little bit faster. So is the slow cooker safe? You know, I got a couple of questions from you know, one of the people who sometimes listen to this webinar before. And you know, it's definitely safe, and then it's safe on the low temperature, you know, the whole entire time. The idea, you know, would be if you can, and we'll talk about that, but just yeah, so cooking them, like even at a low temperature, it's usually between 170 degrees and 280 degrees Fahrenheit. So there's something called the danger zone with food safety. It's like 40 to 140 about, and that's where you don't want to keep the food for too long. So you know, when we're going to the grocery store and we're like taking out, you know, frozen groceries, and you know they're in our car and stuff like that, that they can really easily get to that danger zone somewhere between 40 degrees because your car is probably not like a fridge, which is about, you know, 40 or less, and then 140, you know, that's hot. So that's why it's important to get the groceries home. But this is going above that, okay? And so we're staying out of the danger zone. So that's why it's keeping the food safe. So if possible, then just to double make sure, try to turn it on for high for the first hour, because that will help get all the ingredients out of the danger zone, and then to low to finish cooking. And so that would be the best of the best ideal scenario. Just because, you know, you probably have cold foods or room temperature foods and you want them out of that room temperature, um, you know, as fast as you can. And then, you know, the first time that you use it, it's best, you know, if you can stay at home and just make sure it's working properly so you don't have to throw out the food, or, you know, I don't know, whatever could happen with a slow cooker. But just if you can stay at home, just double check it or bring it to work with you. Just ensure that it's doing okay. So here's a couple notes on the safety. We already talked about, you know, a lot of them already. So just washing your hands before, during, and after, right? That's a key, especially now, right? We haven't heard that one before, washing our hands. So start with a clean slow cooker utensils work surface, makes sense. And then this one too, you know, thaw the meat and the poultry before you add them to the slow cooker. And so the reason for this is, um, you know, it could take several hours to reach a high enough temperature to destroy the bacteria if the meat is frozen. Okay, so it could stay in the danger zone, that 40 to 140, too long. And so the bacteria multiply rapidly at those temperatures. So that's why. And then if you can, you know, cut the meat into uniform pieces, and they'll ensure thorough cooking. So if you have this big cut of meat, right, you can definitely use the slow cooker for that. It's just that, you know, if you want more uniform cooking instead of like, here's the outside got really cooked and the inside less so, and you can cut it up, that could be a good option. So also check your instruction booklet on what size you can put in there. You don't want to, you're banging that thing in there. So the idea is you want to have it fit in there nicely, right? So that it can cook safely. And so then there's the meat cuts, if they're too large, is that bacteria growth. We're talking about this. So you guys are I'm trying to drive home that message, but probably hearing it enough already. But large cuts of meat, right? They can be cooked safely. Just consult that booklet on the best sizes for your slow cooker. Available at different sizes, just like we talked about, and you can always cut it up, right? So if you have a big chunk and you're just not so sure, that would be good. And then add some liquid, just, even a little bit, such as broth or water, even barbecue sauce, and then keep the lid on. So those are key things. So the broth, the water, the barbecue sauce, just anything with a little bit of liquid that helps it steam while it's cooking, okay? So that's why people add those things. The steaming helps cook it. That's what it does. So if you can cut up the meals, if you do that, cut up these things ahead of time, which is great if you're running somewhere. Try to put these foods separately in the refrigerator, just because once they're together, that chopped raw meat, that is starting to spread bacteria onto the vegetables, and they're eventually going to go together and get cooking. But remember how they have to have time to get to the high temperature. So that's why it's better just to keep them separate when you can, right? So, and you don't want to keep the things, I know it's really tempting to put them in that insert of the slow cooker, but you don't want to add the really cold slow cooker insert into the hot slow cooker, because the thing can crack, and then also it takes longer to get it up to that high temperature again. So you guys are really starting to get it, but just it can take a while to reach that temperature, especially if anything's frozen, right? You just don't want it to get a head start on you. And so those are all things we can prevent. And then just a tip, right? It's going to work either way, but vegetables, they tend to cook slower than the meat. And I would, in my head, I probably think the opposite. So try to, you guys might not have problems, but just think the vegetables, something like a carrot or something like that. I should know this. Okay, so one time a friend and I, we made a pork chop. We read a recipe online, probably before they got good, but it said to take a pork chop. This was in college, right? Take a pork chop and put half of a raw sweet potato on top of the pork chop, and then put in the oven. And so if you guys could guess which thing got done first, it was the pork chop by a long time. The sweet potato takes forever, just when it's not, takes like an hour, and where the, the little cut of meat did not. And so just remembering then, maybe I can remember that. So vegetables, they're going to take longer. So put them at the bottom, and that'll give them, just like a little bit of extra time. And then plus the juices will drip down on them and really flavor those things. And I have to tell you too, soaking and boiling the dried beans, doing that quick soak and then boil, even for 2 minutes, and then shutting it off if you're cooking dry beans before you put them in the slow cooker can be really important. There's something with kidney beans, and they actually have a toxin, but the boiling destroys the toxin. But sometimes the crock pot's meant to steam, and cook things, not necessarily boil out toxins or anything. So just with kidney, if you're making a chili, if you can just boil those beans just quick ahead of time, that would be key. Okay, so that's that. And then for easier cleanup, you guys, just like spraying it works wonders, right? It can really help you. And then the liners can also help. Somebody asked me once about, how are those, they look really plasticky to me. How is that safe? So they're made out of this nylon resin. And so they're designed really for that crock pot, and they're designed to hold up. And the FDA has done research on it, and then found that, they are safe to use. And that, they did find, right, that they can, small amounts of this, of the liners can, if exposed to high temperatures for a really long period of time, can, go into, can like break down, right? But however, the FDA, I'm quoting here, has determined based on current data that the amount of the chemical migration poses no health risk. So, and then a couple other sites that I looked at, pretty reputable, and little or no like risk of the exposure for these. So that might be more than you wanted to know about these, but just they can work great, and they're meant to be in your slow cooker, and they should be safe. And then I just wanted a quick thing, right before you're gonna eat, then these are the temperatures that the meat should be at. So, if your meat, you're just about to have that pork roast meal, just the idea would be to take out that food thermometer. So if you don't have one, get one for Christmas. That should go number one on your list, just so that you can make sure you're safe. And then you just prick it in there and just make sure. Then just think poultry has to be at the highest temperature. Sometimes you would think it's meat, like pieces of other things like pork or beef, but it's really the chicken and the turkey. So think birds. The birds need to fly. They need a high temperature. So 165 on those. And then something I just grew up with a lot, but my mom would always drill this home to me, just filling a slow cooker no less than a half full and no more than 2/3 full, because that's when it works its best at that. If it has it too small, it's can get overcooked, and then too high, that's that problem with the danger zone, right? Takes forever for it to get up this really, really high, all this food, right? So you want to keep it there. So just like what I said, less than half, it could be, you could end up with a little bit of burnt edges on that. So here's how they work. So they work, they keep food safe through the direct heat from the pot, right? The lengthy cooking. And then so the crock pot, it has heat on the sides too and the bottom, which is helpful. And then it's steam, is created, and then its steam is created in that tightly covered container. So, right, so it's just like steaming in this kettle. And so that's why if you want to keep the lid on. So that's the key, right? So how, I don't know if I've I think about the work potlucks, people will peek in them and see, what's cooking. And so if the thing is not done, right, that is, you're just like really slowing down the cooking process. So the idea is those locked lids, some people have them and they use them in their cars and stuff, but really they're good just to keep the coworkers out of lifting the lid. Okay. You want to keep that lid on to keep the food safe and to get it, cooking again. Because once you take the lid off, you're just adding a lot of time onto just even a few seconds means like losing all that heat that it's built up. Okay. And you can check it at the end, towards the end of the cooking time. That's fine. Because sometimes you want to add some extra ingredients, which we can talk about. But just at the beginning or in the middle, you don't want to take it off. So if you're not at home and the power goes out, if you're not really sure, just, for your safety, throw it away. But if you are at home, you can take it out of that slow cooker and just cook it a different way. Keep cooking it until it gets done. And then if it was completely cooked and when the outage happened, it should remain safe in that slow cooker for 2 hours, even shut off. Okay. So that's important too. Or just a good note, I guess. So which ingredient do you put first in the slow cooker? You guys want to write it in the chat box? First person in the chat box. Veggies. You guys are awesome. Yes, it's veggies actually go first. And then you can do the meat and then you pour the liquid on top. You could maybe put the liquid in first, but the vegetables, they're the ideas first. And then which one is true? So you all know, one, always thaw the meat or the poultry before putting it in the slow cooker. should you fill a slow cooker between 1/4 and 3/4 full? Or if the power goes out, the food in a slow cooker will be safe several hours if you leave the lid on. Yes, you guys are great. Good job. So always thaw before you put it in there. Okay. So here are just some ideas, and then we're going to get back to a couple other fun tips. So pot roast, right? Simple and delicious. But in America, we aren't eating enough vegetables. So keep that in mind here. This is a great opportunity to add more vegetables. Okay. So we got that pot roast, and then that beef stew or pot roast, they'll add extra flavor, right? So put all those veggies at the bottom. And then if you do want to save the broth, I have some coworkers who love that, use the beef broth. You can put in extra water then, right? Just so you can make the broth. And then you want to skim the fat off the top. And so you can put it in the fridge, and then the fat will rise to the top, and you want to take that off, okay? And then you'll have total flavor below that. So it's called the pot liquor, right? The good looking, all that liquid, good stuff. So then just some beef and pork cuts that work well. And just remembering, the slow cooker can be great, helps the less expensive, leaner cuts of meat really become tender and shrink less. So these are some leaner options, right? Ground beef, it can be cooked in a slow cooker. I want you to know that. You'd pour in about 1/4 of a cup of water for each pound of beef. So you could just cook it in there, no problem. On high, 2 to 3 hours, or low for 4 to 6. And then you can use that beef in different things, too. And the risk for that is if you add the ground beef raw, right, to your soup or anything like that, the risk is that it could clump up and add extra grease to the dish. So really recommend kind of with that one, cooking it ahead of time. And plus you'll get more flavor. Browning meat will give it more flavor. So sometimes some recipes, they suggest doing that. They suggest browning the meat first, and you're thinking, is this worth an extra step? Because that's one other dish, right? But it really intensifies the flavor, even if you can just brown it a little bit and then put it in. But some lean options like chuck tender roast and chuck eye roast, they're around 150 calories for 3 ounces, which would be about the palm of your hand. And so that's pretty good. That's pretty good for meat. That's getting down by chicken breast. So they work well for slow cooking too, okay? And you can go to Beef Fits, What's for Dinner, and they'll show you which ones are really good for slow cookers. But browning that meat could be really good. And then cooking your own chicken. So you can cover the chicken with water. Then you can save that chicken broth, just like we talked about, but you want a little bit of water in there. And you want to cook it to internal temperature then. Remember, it needs to fly high. 165 should slip easily from the bones. And then this is that time to add in all those vegetables you can, okay? Things like parsley, thyme, bay leaf, peppercorns, really good with it too, okay? Sorry, and then put a little water with it, and then you can end up with some good broth. So roasting chicken, then this is, you can do a whole chicken in there, right? Season it, add some veggies below it. You don't need a ton of liquid if you don't want to make chicken broth, because they do make their own juices. So then the chicken will kind of steam with its own. Trying to think if there's anything else on that one, but just cooking low 4 to 8 hours. And then you want it at 165. Let's think if there's any more. Just really spraying the crock pot could be a key one with that one. Think about that too. Then this one, love this recipe. So this one will be in your handout. So I was going to send you a bunch of recipes, and then hopefully you will find one that kind of something different for you to try in the slow cooker. But I like these kind of foods. So then just putting these, you can put all these ingredients in. You can leave out something if you don't have them. You put the chicken breast in there, and then you pour all the other things right on top. And then you can leave out something if you don't have. You can add something in, but then you end up with kind of a slow cooker chicken taco or a burrito, or you could use that just as, kind of like a soup. And then here's some ideas on prepping the night before, like lentils, right? They're great. You know how I was talking about the beans? You probably should boil those before you put those in there. Just pre-boil them a little bit. But lentils, don't have to do that. They take less time to cook, and you never have to pre-boil them. So that is the advantage with those. And they have really high fiber, fat-free, and lean, great source of protein. So if you would use meat with this soup then, and this one is also in your recipe book, just, you'd want to have the meat separate the night before, and then you can just throw it all in, right? Here are some different ideas too. There's vegetable lasagna, jambalaya, breakfast casserole, bean soups, all these things, chili. That's a good one. And you can just take whatever is available from your garden right there. Just saute it up. You add a jar of pasta sauce, right? A little bit of water, and then you just kind of layer it, and you can make a lasagna just like that. So you can put in some lasagna noodles, and I've had some coworkers who do it, and they don't even use, they use whole wheat. They don't even use those pre-cooked noodles or anything like that. It turns out fine. So just, yeah, you don't have to be fearful of the lasagna either, right? And the people who have done this, I have not done the lasagna recently anyway in a slow cooker, but finds that, it usually gets done at about 4 hours. So the risk with noodles, I was talking about adding some things in at the end. Noodles might be one of those you'd want to cook separate, just because noodles, if they're in there for, 10 hours, they tend to become a little mushy. Okay. So that would be one thing. I used to work in a kitchen, and we'd have the soups, right? The soup would all be done, and then the pasta would be separate. And then right before we serve, you put the noodles with the rest of the soup that's in the slow cooker, just because you want, don't want to serve the mushy noodles. So that's why. But, they're safe. You can if you want. So just, I think, yeah. And then the other thing too is some people were asking me, could you just leave it on the low, for multiple hours? And you can, and it will be safe. And then the idea is that the problem is that some foods, after a certain point, they don't want to be cooked 12 hours. And so you can eventually cook out, like, I was talking about there are certain meats that love being tenderized, but there's a point which they will start to dry out eventually, where they start to toughen up, and you would ideally want to move that slow cooker from the low to the warm to keep them safe and good until you can get home. Okay. So here's another eggplant pasta sauce. This one is also in your recipe book. Okay. So this one is a quicker cooking one. So you might want to do this one if you just have about 4 hours, and then using whole wheat pasta. Don't forget that for the extra fiber. Spaghetti squash. This is another really good one for that. You just put a little bit of water on the bottom, then you cut it in half, and then it looks like spaghetti when it comes out. My favorite is with tomato sauce on there and a sprinkle of cheese, just like spaghetti. And that would be a really low carbohydrate option for anybody who's diabetic. And then another way people love that is just with some garlic or just a little bit of olive oil, and just kind of toss like that with some vegetables, maybe some asparagus or something like that. So you want to cook that one low, 6 to 8 hours would be great for that one. And this one is also in your recipe handout. And then we have this too. And some holidays are coming up, and this could be a good one for your slow cooker. I know that picture might not look, amazing, but you can do it differently in your slow cooker. And, you put in the apples, right? And then you kind of core them, but they come out delicious. So it's like you can stuff in maybe walnuts and dried fruit. Yeah, and it's just really good, right? So that's kind of like a baked applesauce with a little bit of crunch, and then you can put in whatever you want. And then these are other dessert options also. So here's kind of how you would do that baked apples, right? So you kind of core them, right? And then you want to add just a little bit of water, and then you cook it on 6 to 8 hours or so. Just some ideas for what you could put in there. So I put like an oatmeal mix in there. It was pretty good. You can just even use like some like a crushed up granola bar or something like that. Make it easy for yourself, and then add in maybe some extra nuts and some fruit, something like that. Be really fun. And then they can be great for keeping foods warm too, like mashed potatoes. That might be coming up, right? Key, mac and cheese, great one. Keep warm. Oatmeal. I did a meal for coworkers once, a brunch, and I did the eggs in there to keep them warm. Scrambled eggs can be really helpful for things like that. Otherwise, how would I have done that, right? Just hard to do bulk scrambled eggs last minute for me anyway. So then handling those leftovers safely, just some keys on this. Really, it's so tempting. I know great people who follow food safety that are still tempted to just put that entire slow cooker like insert into the fridge when it's done cooking, when they're done eating out of it. And so you really don't want to do that just for food safety wise, okay? Because it'd be taking that hot slow cooker insert and putting it inside the fridge, which heats up everything inside the fridge. And also, unless it's 2 inches or less left in the bottom, you really want to have it in a shallow container so that it can cool quickly. So you want to keep things out of that danger zone. So remember the danger zone, 40 to 140. So you want to just always try to get things out of there as fast as you can, just so you don't have an upset stomach and you don't get sick for some other reason than all the reasons we're getting sick right now. So just you want to refrigerate them within 2 hours. So once you shut off that slow cooker and once it's not, warm anymore and it's not on the warm setting anymore. So think Thanksgiving too, or any of those holidays, try to get it into the fridge in that 2 inches or less container after 2 hours. Okay. You just want it to cool quickly. So just like what I said, once they're removed from the slow cooker. And then the other idea would be not to reheat the leftovers in your slow cooker, because just it might not be cooking fast enough to be safe. So USDA recommends that you just cook them. You can definitely cook them a different way and then put them back in the slow cooker to keep them warm, but you just don't want to reheat them in there, okay? And see if there's anything else. Yeah. But just like, all the ingredients will be cold. You just want them to be safe, okay? Not recommended, just bacteria can rapidly multiply. And just that you already did that with this, so you already had them at that point where they're having to heat up. So you just don't want to have to put the food through that again twice, because that'll risk your food bacteria problems. So I'm trying to think anything else on that one. Not right now. So reheating leftovers, stovetop, you got that. And then, you can put them at that low or warm. So just review. Slow cookers work well for reheating leftovers. I don't know. You guys get that one wrong, right? Store leftovers in the slow cooker, insert in the refrigerator, or reheat leftovers in the microwave or on a stove to 165, then transfer them to the low setting. Yay, you guys got it. Looking at the chat box. So 3, yes. So you want to reheat them in there, not in the slow cooker. Good job, you guys. So I'm talking really quickly. I'm sorry. But converting your recipes for your slow cooker. So the idea for this one then, use a recipe. It'd be great with similar ingredients amounts to like a slow cooker recipe you know already. Those are the best ones to convert. Liquids, they can often be reduced. So by 1/3 to 1/2. In a slow cooker, they don't boil away like they do in a pot. So the idea in the slow cooker is that things steam, whereas in the pot, the steam is often released, right? So that's why sometimes you can need to add extra water. But in the slow cooker, the liquids don't boil away like that. So unless your coworker leaves the lid off the entire time, then they might boil away. But so usually you can reduce that lid. And then remembering too, alcohol. So if your dish has alcohol, if you're using a pan, that will burn off and evaporate. But if you have alcohol in your slow cooker, it's going to stay in there. Okay. So just you might want to reduce the alcohol amount too. So sometimes people cook with wine or something like that. So key tip on that. All right. So converting soup recipes, liquids don't matter much. It's a soup, right? So even if it has a little more broth, it's just a little more soup. And then what we talked about, adding pasta separately at the end, just if you would like, because then it'll help prevent it from getting mushy. Especially things like orzo, those are those little tiny noodles, or elbow, those can become, last 20 to 30 minutes, you can add those in. And they don't have to be cooked separately. If you don't want to, you can just add them in at the last 20 to 30 minutes. And then shrimp would be another one like that too. It cooks quickly. If anyone's made shrimp on the stovetop, it's just like briefly in that pan. And so it's not a really good slow cooker 10-hour option. So shrimp would be something you'd want to put in at the end. Debbie, she said the pictures are making her hungry. I know, sorry. Everyone come over, we'll have slow cooker stuff. Yeah, and some other people too, they said adding, just made a note, just the green beans. Some people really like those, adding those towards the end instead of right at the beginning. Also, just some people don't like them, extra cooked. My dad loves his stuff, kind of all blended together. So that would perfect for him. Yeah, and just cooking it 10 to 11 hours just because you can doesn't mean you should. Cream, if you're using cream, milk especially more so than cream, but if you're adding those things, try to add them just like at the last minute before serving, because if they're cooked for a long time, they can end up curdling. The exception is sometimes cheese, and Velveeta is special, because I'm not sure Velveeta is made up of some different things other than just cheese. So that's why it can be cooked for a long time in those Velveeta dips. So just exception though with the cheese and things like that, milk, usually adding them just towards the last amount of time so they're not boiling for a long time to prevent the curdling. And then here's a helpful chart, right? So if your normal recipe says you want to cook it for like 15 to 30 minutes, if it's low, it'd be about 4 to 6 hours. High would be 1.5 to 2 hours. So really just multiply it by a lot. Okay, so the 15-minute ones, those are the ones that cooking on low, if your recipe usually says it's going to take 50 minutes to 3 hours, just normal in a pot, then those are ones that are great for the low setting forever, for a good amount of time. And you can buy a programmable crock pot, or you can get one with a timer. Some things are good like that. Somebody suggested, using one like, the Christmas light timers. You can just attach it onto your crock pot if you don't have one, and then that could be an inexpensive option. But the thing is, you really want that crock pot. So I did some research on this. That same person had emailed me some questions before this presentation, just on, could I have some things that I want my like slow cooker to, so say he's at work all day, right? And then he wants the meal at like 7 or 9 at night, even, he doesn't get home till late. The idea would be to have it start out in the slow cooker and turn it on right away. So you don't want to have a programmable crock pot and then it's just like sitting on your counter and then it starts later. So what you would want is something where it will, at the end of the cooking time, so then you could set it to cook for this amount of time, and then it'll kick to warm once it stops, once it's already cooked. So you just want it at that warm temperature and holding it for you at the warm temperature. Okay, that's what you want. So what you don't want is you don't want the crock pot to cook for 4 hours and then at say 12 o'clock the crock pot just shuts off. And then it's, and then he gets home at 9. And so that would be like, it would be like the power going out where you're like, oh no, you might have to throw that. So the idea is you want it to kick it to the warm, and then you can set like an exact cooking time for it and then just have it switch to warm when it's up. And then just double checking, it's not a bad idea either, right before you eat it, just to make sure that it's above 140, because remember that danger zone. So if you're eating foods when you get home and it's like it's in the danger zone, you're like, how long has it been there? So you want it to be a 140 or above. So put that thermometer in there and just double check it at least a couple times just to know. So just here's a quote, no matter what anyone says, my cooking is excellent. Smoke alarm cheering me on. And just here's some final thoughts about the slow cooker. So it's not about being the best or the most perfect cook, but it's really about just, sharing that meal then with your family, right? Or your small group of friends. Now, okay, the kitchen, casserole itself, this is where we spend our happiest moments, where we find joy of being a family. Mario said that. And then some of the most important conversations really occur at family dinner tables. And there are just, if you are a parent or if you're a grandparent, just really remembering having meals together. It really helps with behavior problems, like preventing them with kids and helping them feel more solid, like with mental health too, with school and things like that. So they're also less likely to do drugs. They found that the more family meals that you have. So just another benefit, maybe if you don't have time to make a meal very much, and it can be takeout too, and just having it together as a family, but the slow cooker could maybe help you do that in a healthier way, which is what I'm trying to get to you guys, really seeing if you can make those recipes with some added vegetables, because those are the things we're missing. Okay, so I have an evaluation I'll send you following this then, and I really do appreciate your feedback. And I have to tell you too, I'm doing a short series. These are just 30-minute classes, but it's foodie fun at home holiday style. So I had the first one, and it's just kind of a fun thing. I'm working on a big report right now, but it's like I'm also working on these. And so our next one is December 2nd. So it's talking about some holiday snacks and gifts you can make. And it can work well with kids too. So if you have kids or grandkids, I'm going to show you some ideas that you can do for yourself or for them, and just some gifts that you can make, edible ones for some people that would be good. And so you can sign up for there. It's on Eventbrite. And then I just want to acknowledge some people who helped with some of the pictures for this and some of the info. They're very great at Nebraska. So, and that's all for me. That's the Eventbrite site right there. And that's the end. So let me see if there are any questions in this, okay, in that chat box. But otherwise, I just want to thank you guys all for being here. I really appreciate this. It's Monday morning and you guys all got here. So that's pretty awesome. And I really appreciate it. I really appreciate your time. So let me see here. So a good web is chicken and dumpling soup the other day in the crock pot. That does sound good. I'd be like, add the veggies, right? That'd be good though. Yeah, people from all over Davenport. Right. Yes. So the recording I'll put on YouTube so you can watch it as many times as you like. And then I will get some handouts for you too. Cider is good in there. Breakfast casseroles, we talked about that. Okay, so yeah, when I've scheduled this one in Zoom, so I did send out, so it should have sent out a Zoom link right when you registered, but then I sent out a reminder about an hour before the class or so. And Eventbrite doesn't do that as much, so I'm making sure that happens. Yeah, mother-in-law always told me I shouldn't leave the slow cooker going all day while we were gone. I told her that was the idea. And so the idea is it could get overcooked, I guess. Maybe that's what she was thinking. Luckily, it is safe if it's on the whole time, okay? So, great. So you guys got those? Check them out above. Trying to think if that, yeah, pulled pork could be great in there, making that and then pulling the pork, putting rosemary with pork. Rosemary can help your memory, you guys. So that was good. Good tip. Yeah. Hey, did you guys know you can make cornbread in that slow cooker? Just read a good recipe for that. I think it's in your handouts actually. So, and you can also just make it and put it on top of your chili, like with the mix at the end, and then you have slow cooker, have cornbread on top. Yeah, geez. Okay, and just remembering, using lean cuts of meat and then skimming the fat can be really good. And oh, I have a recipe I think with pork shoulder besides pulled pork. I think it's in your handouts, which can be really good. I think of that but tacos can be awesome too, and just putting vegetables with it or a soup. Oh, you could really use the pulled pork for just anything you use leftover turkey too. So things like that. Do a pulled pork, open faced toasted sandwich. Yeah, and the noodles, the advantage is putting them in there can really they absorb that broth flavor then. Yeah, Judith suggested, with that pork, putting it in chunks and then eating it. You don't want to have pulled pork. All right, so let's see if there's anything else. Yeah, you guys, I wish there was a really easy way to make sure you guys all it saves that Zoom link for you. Sometimes I've been trying to find, the Zoom link for classes, and I'm like, where's the Zoom link? I put it in my calendar, like I have an Outlook calendar on my computer, so I put it in there, but that doesn't work for everybody. Yeah. Pat says she wants to try the one with corn black beans. It's one of my favorites. Well, thank you guys all. If there are no other questions, I hope I got everything, and I hope you guys have a good week. Let's have a good week, okay? All right. Thank you guys. Bye, everybody.